Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today's Todd McFarlane Day, so we're looking at Spawn number 15, cover dated November 1993. I probably mentioned it before, but I'll repeat. I think this is around the time where Todd starts treading water a little bit on Spawn. He's got other things going on. He's got the Spawn Batman crossover coming up, which Greg Capullo will replace him for issues 16, 17, and 18 with writer Grant Morrison, so he can work on that. Todd will only come back with issue 21. There's some weird number and stuff that goes on that I'll go more into detail as we hit those issues, but basically Todd skips ahead to issue, if I'm not mistaken, 21, and then 18 and 19 come out a little bit later, not sequentially. Those are drawn by Greg Capullo as well with some other writer, I forget his name. When we get to reviewing those issues, obviously I'll point that out. But basically Todd's got a lot on his plate. This is also in around the time that he started the toy company. So I definitely feel, looking back now at these issues that I didn't know at the time, but Todd is losing a bit of steam, losing a bit of inspiration, and he's, again, going back to earlier issues and stuff that was going on in the series to strip mine that for some storylines. So I think he's kind of running out of ideas for stories and just going back to the well of the first kind of 12 issues of Spawn, which, you know, the first year you've got the origin of Spawn, the first kind of 4-issue series. The first 4 issue of the series, you've got Billy Kincaid is introduced in issue number 5, which is kind of a, you know, somewhat well-known issue, and I don't know if it's, well remembered, but definitely remembered, if not for great reasons. You know, the subject matter mostly, right? And after that, you've got the 4 writers coming in, right? Alan Moore, Neil Gaiman, Frank Miller, Dave Sim, so they all each do an issue that covers 4 issues, and then basically finishing up with kind of everything that's been established in the first year of Image with issues 12 and 13, where Spawn takes on Chapel, who was his killer when he was alive, so the killer of Al Simmons. And again, now we're just kind of rehashing some stuff we've seen before. So in this issue, this is the 2-parter of the Violator versus Medieval Spawn, which started last issue. Basically, the clown version of Violator is stuck in his clown body, and he's basically retelling the story of his confrontation with Medieval Spawn back in the day, some kids in an alleyway, and basically portraying himself in the narration as the good guy and Spawn as the bad guy. I don't know if Todd came up with that idea more in this issue. I just don't feel that was so obvious in the narration of last issue. And it's almost like when he was working on this issue, he came up with the idea of, oh yeah, let's also throw in the fact that, you know, Violator clearly thinks he's the hero of the story and not the villain, right? And I feel like that wasn't so obvious in last issue's narration, but it is more in this one here. Starting with the cover, pretty kind of, you know, standard shot of a character holding a severed head. This is kind of a classic. It's been around for years in barbarian comics and horror comics and stuff, you know, heavy metal, that kind of thing. So I guess this is Todd's kind of closest version of a heavy metal cover. And when I say heavy metal, I don't mean the music. I mean the magazine, obviously. If you're into comics, you most definitely know about heavy metal. Metal Hurlant in French, right? Where it started in France first. Cool shot of Medieval Spawn, really well done. He's doing the layering with the magic smoke and the cape and stuff, which, you know, is a McFarlane trope. He's changed it around where instead of holding up the head, Spawn's got his sword going through Violator's head here. I like the idea overall. Just kind of find it weird that Violator's head here is kind of basically empty and you can see the sword. I think that's for graphic reasons, creating those different planes. So graphically, probably just made more sense to do it high contrast so we could see part of the sword there and just darken in the rest. And deadline wise, I think is probably a good idea as well. So I think this is one of the issues where you start to see Todd working for the deadline. And I'll be pointing out examples of that, or what I think are examples of that, as we go through the issue. So let's crack her open, have a look inside. Spawn staple, a wall of text on the first page. So get used to that as we go through the Spawn issues. You'll see a lot of that. Definitely a recap of what's gone on before. So maybe Todd's thinking that, you know, regular readers are not going to read all this. They're just going to move on to the story. I mean, that's what I do, and that's what I used to do back in the day. I think I would read these anyways and just kind of find out that, yeah, again, it was a recap. So back in the day, no internet and stuff, you would get comics, you know, and until the week after, when you get more new comics, you would pour over the new comics you bought. So you'd read them first and probably leaf through them a whole bunch of times during the week, and then start the whole process over next new comic book day with the new comics you got that week. So that was kind of how I did it. So Violator back in the alleyway talking to the kids, and then straight into the story. What you'll notice is you got a lot of close-ups, you know, a lot of medium shots, a lot of big shots of characters, minimal background all around. All the backgrounds here, you know, you don't need to start ruling out perspective and stuff. It can pretty much be drawn freehand. Here's a good example here, right? Simple. The story takes place in the woods with the Violator medieval spawn, so, you know, just like I've mentioned in my Dale Keown reviews, you don't have to worry too much about background and being too precise. You can get through that pretty quickly. I've always thought this was weird. Unfortunately, maybe the Tom McFarlane art style, but the maiden in this story, you know, her hair is brown, but I mean, she almost pretty much looks like Angela. So I always thought it was a little confusing. You would think you would try to make her look a little bit different, since Angela is definitely associated with Medieval Spawn, that issue 9 with Neil Gaiman. So, but you know, like a lot of artists, Tom McFarlane, I think, draws kind of the same lady face over and over. Jim Lee kind of does the same thing. Rob Liefeld, a lot of the Image guys do that, right? So. And boom, we get our first view of Medieval Spawn without his armor on. So same idea, kind of burnt, crusty, zombie-like skin appearance, very textured. And just a different kind of look where he's still got like a layer of skin on top. And, you know, he's got the I don't know what you'd call this, the streak of skin from, you know, above the top lip to the bottom lip. Again, as a double page splash, not bad. I don't know if this panel necessarily needed it, but I feel like for deadline reasons, he's like, okay, let's do a double page splash. You know, big hand in the foreground, cool shot of the hero. I could probably get through this pretty quickly. He's telling himself, again, the background, you know, no perspective or anything to line out. So this double page splash, I'm assuming, was done pretty quickly. And I mean, not much of a story here at this point. We've basically just got, you know, the action sequence between Violator and Medieval Spawn. We've got some cool stuff. I feel like there's some drawings you can tell where like something like this was inked really quickly and done really quickly. I mean, the figures all look great, but there is something, I think, to the inks that indicate that it's being done pretty darn quickly, which, don't get me wrong, on a shot like this, I think works well and helps, you know, add to the dynamism of the shot, and the power of it. I don't know if it starts here. Let me check the credits real quick, because we didn't talk. There's no thank you to Greg Capullo, but I suspect that maybe around this issue, and more obviously so when I move on to the next Todd McFarlane Spawn issue that we're going to review, which is 21, you start to see that more than likely Greg Capullo is helping behind the scenes before he gets actual credit. I don't know for sure on these ones. I feel like the foreshortening is maybe, you know, Greg Capullo-ish, other than this leg here. I could be wrong on that, but they're definitely in the later issues after this, there will be instances where Tom McFarlane's credited as the artist, but definitely Greg Capullo is, excuse me, responsible for some of the layouts and some of the underdrawing, I think, of those issues. And when we get there, I'll point it out, obviously. But again, like, you know, I'll go through this pretty quickly. Artistically, still McFarlane, but just minimal backgrounds and lots of medium and close-up shots is what we're getting in these pages. You know, we get another splash. It's mostly just, you know, big cool images of Spawn and Violator fighting each other. I think this one looks pretty good here. They changed the color on Spawn all of a sudden. I don't know why. Is it a lighting effect? You know, not that it ruins my enjoyment of the story or anything, but, you know, we've talked about McFarlane being consistent, not so consistent on the design of Medieval Spawn, but, you know, I guess the goal is to make him look gross and disgusting, so that definitely works there. I like when McFarlane does this kind of stuff compositionally, where he uses an element of the drawing to kind of, you know, cut off the panel here. So the top of Violator's horn is the bottom of this panel, and then kind of indicates the top of this panel down here. I think that works pretty well. But yeah, like I said, just a lot. I feel like McFarlane was just working through this one very, very quickly. This is interesting, this effect here. So I don't hate it. I think it's pretty cool. You know, usually when you get whatever you want to call them, dynamics lines or movement lines or manga lines or whatever, you know, you kind of have a vanishing point and you go out from there and you draw straight lines. Here he's done curved lines, which I think work really well. I have to assume he probably used the French curve for this. And when I see stuff like that, it just makes me want to not be so rigid when I use this kind of technique, and maybe use the French curve as well for something like that. I've done it before, but I think, you know, looking at this image, I think it looks pretty cool. I feel like I should do more of that. And so ultimately what they're hinting at here through the storyline, and what Violator kind of tells the kids, is that he was basically the first dragon, right? Or he's the reason behind the legends of the dragon, right? When he used his acid stomach fire breath to burn Spawn, that's what he's getting at here. So it says here, so my legend was born. The witch's witless retellings became more erratic as she wandered village to hamlet. Over the generations, other storytellers rendered the story with whimsy and magnificence. You want proof? It's as close as your nearest library, which is funny because today you would probably say as your nearest Google search or internet search. I don't know if people still go to the library. I think they do. They still exist. But they're probably on their way out, I think. Though the pictures aren't quite right, my legacy has endured. I was the first dragon. It's not the name I give myself, and I don't know why they colored me green, but hey, that's showbiz. I'm not complaining. So, again, kind of weird the fact that Violators is you know, projecting himself in the story as the hero and Spawn as the villain. But I always thought this was weird as a kid too, when you get to the end and he reveals that, you know, he's the inspiration behind the legends of the dragon. Just, I don't know if that works quite well for me, just because, you know, dragons are often, not that they're seen as villains, but they're often seen as really dangerous, and heroes tend to fight dragons generally. Dragons don't tend to be the good guys. I mean, I'm sure there's tons of stories out there that would be a little bit different, or portray that in a different way, but I mean, again, generally, dragons are something to be feared and not necessarily heroes in the stories, right? And that's how it ends there. We've got a little bit of a lead into the Violator series, right? So how are we going to kind of segue into the Violator miniseries, which is cool, and I will review soon enough. So the lead up to the Violator series is down here. Basically what it's at, you got a little drawing of Peter David there. He's reading the paper. Police still have no leads in the mysterious deaths of New York's crime lords. The victims were brutally murdered in their offices. One line of investigation is directed towards a renegade Youngblood type or Shadowhawk-inspired wacko. Even alleged criminal kingpin Tony Twist had sent for protection in the form of the Italian bodyguard Overt Kill. Twist angrily, lays blame at the feet of these costume do-gooders. What? It's time I paid Mr. Twist a little visit. Ain't no way someone else gets my credit for my kills. So, again, that's the lead-in for the Violator series. Now, this sequence is kind of odd to me. I feel like Todd got through the whole Violator thing and realized, oh, crap, I need a few more pages to make this a 22-page standard comic. So we get to this sequence, which just has, again, his attention is elsewhere, so just some strange details. First of all, Spawn not in costume, but also not using his magic to look like the, you know, surfer white guy that he's done in the earlier issues. So dressed in pants and tattered shirt all of a sudden, and not his Spawn costume. So I find that's kind of odd. You know, he's sleeping outside a restaurant, and this guy comes out who's, I guess, some sort of restaurant bodyguard. Like, it's kind of a weird thing. He's mentioning that he's tired that these bums are hanging around outside waiting to steal some of the food that they throw out. So he starts hassling Spawn here. Another detail, Spawn has no nose. Then he does have a nose. So, like I said, kind of weird to me. Some of these shots, again, I feel like maybe this is a Greg Capullo drawn face. I don't know for sure. You know, obviously Todd would come back and ink on top to make it look Toddish. But I do feel that maybe Greg Capullo is already helping him out in these issues. Can't know for 100%. Not 100% sure on that. I know for the next few issues it'll be more obvious, and I know for sure he's doing that. Yeah, so the ear, all of a sudden Spawn has ears. That's another weird one. And again, I feel like he just kind of probably drew this between two things he was working on and really not paying attention, and probably realized, oh no, you know, I can't have this guy fighting Spawn in his costume, because if he's got his costume, he can easily use it to take this guy down. So Spawn doesn't use the costume for some reason, and it's never really explained here if the costume is somewhere else or if that is the costume changing to look like regular street clothes. Not quite sure on that one. And again, here's more examples of like quick inking from McFarlane, right? He's using a lot of black and kind of messier inking that I usually see from him. Not that I think it's bad or anything. Again, in a weird way, this whole sequence I find is pretty dynamic for Todd McFarlane from his usual stuff, and maybe that's because he wasn't putting so much thought into it and drew it probably pretty quickly. So this whole sequence here basically is Spawn threatening this guy and telling him that basically, the alleys are Spawn territory, as he says here, right? And again, really weird because he's got the shirt on, he's got the pants on, then all of a sudden, if you look here and you really pay attention to the coloring, he's pretty much naked. So very inconsistent in these pages here. And like I said, the nose appears and disappears. It's gone again. And another example of a face here that I feel is kind of maybe more in line with Greg Capullo's art than with Todd McFarlane's. Not as far as the aesthetic and the inking, but the layout and the kind of profile shot that Greg Capullo usually does. And then, of course, we get just a little shot here of, Terry and Wanda and the impending doom, the evil that is lurking and looking over them here. So, just reminding them they've called him on the phone. Now, Terry, it's a dirty job, but someone's got to do it. Kiss that baby of yours for me, too. So now we know that, Terry's and Wanda's family, and by definition, Cyan, the kid as well, are being threatened. And that's where Todd's leaving us off with this issue, and he won't be back again, as I mentioned, until issue 21. Still the early days of Spawn, so we're getting some cool pinups from different artists. Not quite sure who this guy is. It's a alright looking pinup. I do like this one here. Never known who this artist is, but I think it's pretty cool. It's got kind of a bubbly, kind of cartoony style. Coloring's pretty cool on that one too. And we got some more fan art. Lots of young kids just copying some image art, which is fine. That's how you start to learn, right? And that's basically it. We've got our advertisement for Spawn Batman coming up, which was a huge event. Kind of a letdown when you got the comic, but still, a Frank Miller written Batman story drawn by Todd McFarlane. It was going to sell a lot, and it did. And still a book that I kind of, enjoy and is a cool part of my collection, no matter how disappointing maybe it was originally. So there you go, guys. That is my review of Spawn issue number 15. If you are subscribed and you're still watching, thank you so much. I really appreciate your support. If you are watching but are not subscribed, please do so below. Takes a quick second, really helps the channel out, helps us grow, helps get us out there to other people who are into comics just like we are, and hopefully helps push us up to the 500 subscribers soon, and then I can release a special video on Big Baby issue number 3. So thank you guys, everybody out there, for watching, and have an awesome day.
Like! Subscribe! Like! Subscribe!
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13. 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KingComics.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.